Welcome back, everyone. I'm Nala.
And I'm Faith.
And this is the Sirens Den breakdown, theories, and things you may have overlooked for episode 6 of Wandavision.
So, this is your official spoiler warning.
This was a wonderfully spooktacular episode. So many references, and a lot of questions answered. So, Faith, take it away.
All right, so we start off with our opening, our 90s sitcom opening, and I am so happy that the 90s sitcom they chose was Malcolm in the Middle. We got an opening that was a straight up Malcolm in the Middle ripoff with a worse song, but something I thought was notable was this was the first credit sequence where Agnes was credited in the title sequence.
I thought that was interesting, especially since we don't see her much in the episode.
I also thought I like the fact that she had the skinny jeans with the bejeweled naughty on the butt, which I feel like was on one hand a hilarious joke, especially for like the type of like trope of sitcom character that she tends to play, but also I think it was also just kind of the art direction team having some fun with just because we still don't know what Agnes's true intentions, but we're pretty sure she's a villain, right? So I think that really felt like just the art director being like, wouldn't it be funny if
we had this naughty character with a naughty bejeweled sweatsuit?
Yeah. And then the episode continues to just be a Malcolm in the Middle ripoff, and it's amazing. And we start with like the kids giving this monologue to the camera as they did in that show, kind of talking about what the episode's going to be about. It is their first Halloween. Uncle's here, and he's the fun kid person, and mom and dad are having some issues. They talk about it's the one time of the year where you get to be someone else because of costumes.
But also because probably Quicksilver is trying to be someone else as well, because he shows up and then the next day is the Halloween episode.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, as we know, the last episode gave us the wonderful cliffhanger that Evan Peters, Quicksilver from the X-Men universe, is here instead of our normal Marvel Cinematic Universe Quicksilver. What is that about? Why is he here? Why did they change him? And it looks like they're trying to hint at that a little bit. The big debate right now, obviously, is this the real Pietro or is it another illusion? And I think if we're going off of what this episode has to say, it's the latter. I don't think he's who he says he is.
I love that Billy is wearing his Wiccan costume, his comic accurate Wiccan costume.
Yeah, that was such another clever art direction detail that they put in there. Was all the characters, Vision, Wiccan and Speed and Wanda, all their Halloween costumes were reminiscents of their original costumes from the comic books. Oh, also, can we talk about like they do a great setup here when or a little bit, or was it this scene or was it the next scene that we see them in when they're still at the house where Quicksilver or where Pietro scares Wanda?
It's this scene still, I believe, because Vision tells her that he's going to do some neighborhood watch duties.
Yeah, and then he left, and then she turned around, and he was right there. And that was both a funny moment, but also just a really, really good setup for later in the episode. Also, can we talk about how tense the Wandavision just their moment where it was in this whole scene? Like they still kind of like fell into that sitcom role sometimes. They had that very Malcolm in the Middle joke about the Mexican wrestler, but they're going through some issues. They need some couples counseling. Because where we left off is he has a awareness kind of that she's created this whole thing and that she has some control over everything that is going on. And
I liked this argument because it was like you said, different. And like Billy mentions, they're fighting. They're not really fighting. It's just different. And there are a lot of times where you can see where Wanda wants to control Vision and wants things to go her way. She obviously wanted them to all go trick-or-treating together. But when Vision was like, no, this is what I'm doing, he kind of looks at her almost like, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to control me? Because then that doesn't look good on you.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of challenging her at this point and still trying to figure out what's going on, which is his ulterior motive for not trick-or-treating with them.
Yeah. I will say, I think for me at least, it's kind of hard to tell if Wanda has the 100% awareness that she is doing all this damage and causing all this, because there are some moments in this episode, as there have been in previous episodes, where she seems genuinely kind of surprised by what's happening. Such as the moment she had with Herb when he was like, do you want anything changed? She seemed to be genuinely baffled by that, even though this episode kind of laid a lot for what is happening. There's still a lot that I don't know, and it's hard to tell right now. I don't think I mean, I think she has some awareness that she has a lot of control here, but I don't think she necessarily knows she has all of it. If that, I don't know.
I mean, I think we'll get to that later on when she is talking with Pietro about like why she's doing this and her not knowing why she's doing this. It just this whole thing just kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
I like that she calls herself a Sokovian fortune teller. I still like that they're not really using the name Scarlet Witch or Quicksilver yet.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of just like skirting around it, because honestly, if you told me that was a Sokovian fortune teller, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I can see it, yeah.
You're like, yeah, that makes sense. Also, can we talk about the little, because they did another a Malcolm in the Middle-esque flashback where they did kind of a Pietro made a joke about how it was worse than the Halloween they had back in Sokovia, and then it cut to them as kids getting a fish while trick-or-treating. But then she doesn't remember it. So it was another kind of hint at who is this Quicksilver character really, but also that was just a genuinely funny scene.
No, I like that a lot. I liked the flaming car in the background.
Yeah.
I like just the destruction. Like, they found time to somehow go trick-or-treating amidst all this chaos. But then you realize that they don't really trick-or-treating is really an American thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's mainly like they don't really do it in Europe or really anywhere else in the world. So him mentioning that was kind of like the first red pickled herring.
Yeah.
As she mentions, that he's not who he says he is.
Uh
And he's also not Wanda's creation, because then he would have known.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it was, that moment was a literal red herring. Also, can we talk about the two kids they got for young Wanda and young Pietro there? Because like their whole moment was getting the fish in the bag and then giving each other the side eye, and they did it so well.
Mm-hmm.
They had one job and they rocked it out of the park. I laughed so hard at that moment.
I think it's funny that when you see, or not funny, I think it's interesting that when you see in the last episode with Growing Pains, when they showed pictures of them growing up, they showed pictures of young Wanda, and she's obviously Elizabeth Olsen.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it's funny that even these kids were essentially recast.
Yeah.
Because the memory wasn't even real. And they were dressed up very reminiscent to Nick Fury and Black Widow. And at that time, those characters wouldn't have been known. So again, that's another kind of hint that memory was fabricated.
Mm-hmm. Also, when she questions it, when she has the I don't quite remember that. Evan Peters, Pietro makes a quip of like, oh, probably repressed it from like all the trauma. And I think that was just kind of another kind of little bit of a hint, hint, nudge, nudge. He knows more than he is letting on because he's probably not who he says he is.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we cut to the Sword headquarters where Hayward just got back from getting his ass handed to him. And Monica goes up to him and is like, "Hey, dude, what? That was dumb. You almost killed everybody. What was that about?" And Tyler was like, "I don't want to hear your opinion." And then Darcy made the so brilliant, it's the guy who almost got murdered by his own murder squad quip.
Burn.
This whole scene, it was Monica, Darcy, and Jimmy just roasting him, and then him being like, "Get the fuck out of my office," knowing that he's not going to come back from that.
I like that it paints Hayward as more of an asshole, not because he's, he essentially like fired them, but because with Darcy's his first response to Darcy asking if she works for him when she was clearly the one that figured this whole thing out.
Yeah,
And she
right?
was the one who told him what was happening. He knows who she is. Like, he's just being even more petty because
Yeah.
he doesn't like that she hurt his feelings.
Mm-hmm. And like, because we saw in the last episode that he went out of his way to humiliate Jimmy and Monica. And he was trying to do the same thing again here, but also like again, this whole scene was them just roasting him after roasting him after roasting him, and the best thing he could come up with, like, who's the sassy friend?
Oh, they're all the sassy friend. For me, it was honestly, when he said that, I was like, okay, wow.
I was like, ooh. Also, that's such a which one of you is the sassy friend? He said to the girl who asked him as he walked by her, "Hey, it's the guy who got murdered by his own murder squad." Like, did answered your own question there, buddy.
Exactly.
He just feels the reason I think he's clearly the villain is he just feels too bad at he just feels too dumb. He feels too bad. He shouldn't be in his job. Like, it's like comical. Like,
Well,
she's
I don't think he was supposed to be in that job anyway. That job was supposed to be Monica's.
well, that's true, but at the same time, it was supposed to be Monica's, but it was really down to Monica and some guy with zero qualifications or any critical thinking ability. Like, she brings up the excellent point. We don't know what's gonna happen if we kill Wanda, dude. You can't just you don't solve a nuclear. Oh, there's a nuclear weapon in town. Let's shoot at it. No.
Right.
Especially if his excuse is you don't know what the last 5 years have been like. Like, yeah, exactly. It's been weird, and aliens have come from space, and we know nothing about the situation. And the last time we knew nothing about a situation or what something was capable of, half the universe disappeared into dust. So maybe we should
leave them alone.
like think about this for like 2 seconds of like it very clearly, I mean, at least to me it felt like, oh, these 3 people are too good at this job. They're figuring out my plans and like what I'm actually trying to do. So I got to get them out of here. But they're escorted off base and then proceed to kick the butts of everybody who escorted them off the base, and they go to sneak into a control room so Darcy can hack into Tyler Hayward's system, and kind of know what his deal is. And
I just want to, give my props to Jimmy for going from little measly card trick to completely pulverizing sword agents. Amazing.
we stand.
But they finally make their way back into the lab. Very reminiscent of how Thor made his way back into the lab to try to get his hammer way back in phase 1.
All right, so we cut back to the neighborhood with Wanda, Pietro, and the kids going trick-or-treating. And Wanda is trying to get a little bit of information from her brother. She's like, hey, do you remember that time in the orphanage with that kid and the skin tag? And Quicksilver's like, oh yeah, no, I see what you're trying to do. You're testing me because I look different.
And she asks him why he looks different, and he kind of brushes that off too.
Yeah. He definitely acknowledged that she was quizzing him and then never answered the question.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, I understand why you do that. I look way different. I'm not going to answer your question. Yeah. So that was sus. Pietro sus.
He's not who he says he is. I'd like to point out that before they start talking, just the two of them, they're obviously with Billy and Tommy, and then they go and start trick-or-treating, and he says, go unleash hell, demon spawn.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought, he has always been making these kind of like spooky, otherworldly, demonic type of references ever since he got there. Which is just kind of even more of a hint as to who could be the actual, big bad, whether it's Mephisto, whether it's Nightmare, the Grim Reaper. These are obviously clues that he's alluding to.
Yeah. I really hope it is Mephisto. So, because that's the big debate, as we all know, as is the whole reason for this side podcast is who is it? Who's the main villain? Who's doing this?
But after that, they have that talk. He mentions that if she found Shangri-La, she wouldn't want to be reminded of the past either. So he's kind of essentially like gaslighting Wanda into thinking that she is doing this and this is her doing.
Mm-hmm.
But still kind of, he's really just kind of throwing all these different things at her that she does not have time to process or deal with, because right after that he's like, all right, I'm gonna go wreak some havoc with the kids, and that's when she goes and meets Herb, who is talking on the radio with the rest of the neighborhood watch, and he mentions that, I love this part because everything that he says, it's just like a classic little sitcom trope of him saying what's going to happen before it happens. And he says that all the candy's been stolen and that the jack-o'-lanterns have been smashed. And obviously the people who are doing all of this is Quicksilver with the help of Tommy more than Billy, because it seems like Tommy is more connected to Quicksilver than Billy is. Billy kind of has his reservations.
Yeah, and that also brings up something I do think is interesting about this episode, because we're all pretty sure that the kids also are not who they say they are, but we see a lot more personality out of them in this episode. And they have very kind of definitive characters and just little quirks. And one of those like little details that I thought was adorable was just how much Tommy looked up to Quicksilver, how Uncle Pietro was the man. In the first episode, when Wanda comes out and reveals her costume and asks her family how she looks, Tommy yells, awesome! And then Pietro's like, horrible. And then Tommy's like, yeah, horrible. Showing that he really wants to be like Pietro, and kind of idolizes him in that. And that also might just be a little bit of a hint, hint, nudge, nudge as to something that happens a little bit later in the episode. But I just thought that was such a humanizing detail for a character that's probably not.
And so when she talks to Herb, she asks that, maybe Vision can help out with all of the havoc that's being wreaked, since that's what Vision was saying he was going to do. He was going to try to keep the troublemakers at bay. And Herb lets her know that Vision isn't working today. And while that kind of shocks her at first, it seems like she is more preoccupied with other stuff, especially since right after that, Herb asks her if something can be changed. And that kind of gives us a hint as to like how much Herb knows, because he's proven he's let on that he knows more than more than what other people know.
Yeah. Herb is another, because I feel there's a lot of characters in the town that we on this podcast have kind of theorized that maybe there's a little bit more to them than we think. And I wouldn't be surprised if Herb is in that camp. Just he is, of the sitcom residents, he's probably the one we see the most next to Agnes. The ones that have been kind of were set up as important in the very first few episodes really haven't shown up that much since then. And then also when in our episode 3, when Agnes and Herb were kind of gossiping outside the house, almost like maybe they are co-conspirators. We talked about maybe Agnes is trying to get what she knows from Herb, but there might have been more to it than that. Again, back to the general character, maybe he's not who he says he is count. I could see Herb in that, especially because Herb and Agnes are the two characters to have kind of broke to Wanda and been like, okay, do you want us to redo that? Like actually referencing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to Vision. He's walking down a suburban block, and sun's going down, and he passes by a family that is glitching, much like how we saw Herb glitch in episode 3. A man on the porch is lifting up and down a pumpkin, and the woman is hanging a decoration, and a single slow tear drips down her face, and it was super rad. I genuinely cannot tell if that was just some actress who just rocked that, or if they just recorded the motion of her doing that once and then digitally added the tear in. Regardless, either the editing team or the acting team, or both, really rocked that little that shot.
Oh yeah, that was spooky time. Especially since by comparison to Wanda and her scene, everything around them was really vibrant and really decorated. Everything was head to toe Halloween. And then you get to where Vision was, and there weren't that many decorations out on the street. There weren't that many people out on the street. There wasn't that much going on, and you could feel that it was different from where Wanda is, and she's the epicenter of everything. I loved the tear because I would also cry if I was forced in a loop to constantly attempt to hang the same decoration.
Yeah. And kind of to bounce off of what you're saying, with that, of they're not in the Wanda spotlight, so they don't have as much focus on them. More than that, Vision lied about what he was doing and where he was going that night. Mm-hmm. So it would make sense that if Wanda didn't know where because we've seen Vision off on his own doing his own thing before, but in all those different circumstances, Wanda knew where he was.
Right, and she was still able to control what was happening in the previous episode. He went to work and she was still able to control everyone at his job. But now, yeah, not knowing where he was gives more that veil is ever so thinning, and he's able to see the glitches that he wasn't able to notice before.
Mm-hmm. And so we then go to our commercial of the week, which was definitely the most morbid of all the commercials that we've gotten for this thing. It was for the product of Yo Magic, a cool yogurt
for survivors.
For survivors. It is a kid starving on a desert island. A buff shark skates out of the ocean and it's like, I was starving once. Have this Yo Magic, dude. And then gives him the kid the magic, the yogurt, dives back into the ocean, and then the kid is unable to break the seal of the yogurt, and ends up dying.
This one was...
It is the first instance of something not being able to break a seal in this episode.
I think this commercial was interesting because this was the first time we don't see any of those previous actors that we've seen throughout the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if, I'm wondering how this is going to move forward. I wonder if we're done with those actors, or if they're going to come back. And I like the theory that each of these episodes or each of these commercials, while dealing with something in Wanda's past, are also representative of the Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
So this one seemed like the Soul Stone, because the character turns into a skeleton by the end. And also the orange sun kind of looks like the orange Soul Stone. And I want to say that the kid on the island was actually Wanda, because he did have the orange hair and the red shirt and was alone, just like she later on expresses that she was later on in
Yeah.
the episode.
I also liked this commercials because I feel like it really kind of summarized what a lot of like Wanda's, like the tragedy of Wanda's character a little bit, that she has this all the power in the world, but she cannot stop death.
That's another good point.
Um,
But I also like to think that the shark was kind of gray, kind of snarky, almost like Quicksilver. He kind of shows up out of nowhere, is like, here's the solution you need, and then pieces out. And while she's trying to figure out that solution, trying to open that yogurt, they can't, and that leads to their demise.
that's true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, the shark definitely took on the same kind of attitude that Pietro has in this episode and the show in general. That kind of relaxed skater punk dude kind of guy. We cut back to Wanda and the fam. The kids are all bummed because Wanda made them give back all the candy. And then Pietro and Wanda talk a little bit alone again, kind of going back to Wanda questioning if he's who he says he is. She brings up, where's his accent? And he responds with, where's yours? And kind of goes into this whole monologue about how he doesn't know how he got here. All he knows is that he was dead, and then she heard him calling to him, and now he's here.
And she does not question it. I was just thinking about how, again, he does not answer her question. He just brings it back to her. Like she's the crazy one. And that nothing he's doing is out of the ordinary. It's all her. And something I want to bring up is one reason this whole thing could be sitcom is in those years in hiding after Civil War with Wanda and Vision. I like the theory that they spent all that time just watching TV and just watching all these sitcoms. And that might be why she has now translated their like final, essentially their final time together. She's now made it their life. It was just a little cool thing.
Yeah.
But after that, we find out that Billy and Tommy, well, first Tommy gets his powers. He gets super speed that he just manifests kind of out of nowhere.
And that's what kind of breaks this kind of more serious conversation between Pietro and Wanda, is Tommy running back being like, I have speed, and then Pietro's over the moon because chip off the old block. He's running around all crazy.
I will say to our Pietro is sus count. He also just talks about playing his part, that he was sent here to stir up some trouble, and to give her grief, which is interesting that he uses the word grief because that is what she is doing. She is currently grieving, but now he's giving her more grief. So it's kind of him alluding to the fact that to make the sus count 5, he's not who he says he is.
Yeah, and then because one of the big things in all of us kind of trying to theorize why whatever is controlling this wanted Wanda to have kids is so those kids have powers, and now those kids are having those powers, whatever they are. That's a big deal that Tommy is able to have speed now.
Which brings up the fact that maybe they could start forming another Avengers team, like the Young Avengers, because that's kind of where Marvel's going right now. They're putting out a lot of new material with younger superheroes, and obviously Billy and Tommy as Wiccan and Speed. Well, then after that, we are back at the Sword headquarters. And I like that. I love how they play with aspect ratio. For the Malcolm in the Middle stuff, it's all full screen. And then when it gets to the outside world, it cuts to the 16:9 letterbox, which actually plays in later on in the episode. That I'll circle back around to.
So we're back at the lab, and this is where we're getting a lot of answers. We got a lot of answers this episode, or at the very least, a lot of details to help fill in the greater picture. The very first one that we get is Monica. She looks at her phone. She's like, "Oh, my engineering friend will be here in an hour. Let's go meet him." All right, no, that not quite yet there yet. But she talks about how she wants to go back in, and Darcy's like, "You can't go back in there. It rewrote your body at like a molecular level twice. You're mutating, bro." She's literally mutating. Can we talk about the fact that she's mutating?
She's becoming a mutant.
She's becoming a mutant. This episode, because we got technically our first born mutants with Billy and Tommy, maybe, kind of, ish. But Monica is straight up, yeah, she's mutating. She is a mutant.
I'm excited to have her go back in a third time and see how that just completely creates this new superhero, with, especially with Hayward talking about how she's always on the superhero's side and she's always advocating for superheroes. Now she's actually going to become a superhero.
Also, with Hayward, when he's like, "You're always advocating for superheroes." One thing I thought was interesting was he was like, "I know your history with Captain Marvel," in kind of a way that implied he's not thrilled about Captain Marvel. Meanwhile, Monica, she was kind of bitter about Captain Marvel in the last episode, which really kind of indicates to me something happened with Captain Marvel between in the last 5 years.
But I like that. I like the line that Monica says when Darcy warns her about going through because of her cells. She talks about how she's seen medical charts to last her a lifetime with cells metastasizing and cells in remission. Obviously, talking about her mom. And I'm wondering if her mom developed her cancer through something extraterrestrial.
That would make sense. Oh, maybe it was through something she did with Captain Marvel.
Oh, that could be yeah, for sure.
And that's why Monica's bitter.
Hey now. Definitely. I can definitely see that.
All right. So we get to Vision. He's walking down a neighborhood. Nobody is moving at all. This is actually my favorite shot of the whole episode. I keep thinking about it is Vision is asking a woman if those are her kids right there, who's not moving. And they do this just beautiful rack focus to just her frozen, and her face is so intense. And they just very smoothly, very quickly rack back to Vision. It is such a good shot, and it is super spooky. But then we have Vision get to Agnes. Agnes is just in a car at Ellis Avenue. Wanda tells the kids earlier, don't go past Ellis Avenue. Agnes is just at a car sitting at Ellis Avenue. And he wakes her up. He does the same thing that he did to Norm that previous episode earlier with that interaction. It basically kind of came down to, "Oh my God, you have to help us. You're an Avenger. Oh my God, are you dead?" Because except a lot better than that, a lot better written and better acted than what that was.
I think this scene is very interesting because it keeps perpetuating the whole narrative that Agnes is an instigator with her talking to Wanda about kids and getting that to happen. And now, like Vision points out when she asks where the town square is, she's like, "Oh, I just got lost." And he's like, "Lost in the town that you grew up in?" And
Mm-hmm.
she's at the edge of Ellis Avenue. And of course, that then prompts Vision to do what he does. More on that later. But with her scene specifically, it was very interesting that no one else, well, actually, no one else has actually seen Vision for Vision. This is the first time someone in the town has seen Vision as Vision.
Yeah.
And she mentions that he's an Avenger. And, that's the first time that he's heard the word Avenger because he doesn't remember his life before Westview, as he explicitly says. So she's kind of just stirring the pot. She's kind of feeding him information because I don't think she was actually in a daze. I think this was all on purpose.
Yeah, no, why there's be absolutely no reason for her to be leaving. Also, like, if Wanda did have all the control in the world of the situation, of course she's going to have her best gal pal Agnes there with her and the kids in the town square doing kooky neighbor best friend stuff. So it really felt like to me this episode, whatever powers that be that control that are also controlling the situation, whatever it is, was trying to kick Vision out. Because we had earlier in the episode when Vision tells Wanda that he won't be there trick-or-treating, and Wanda is like, "You can't, it's the kids first." Pietro immediately steps in and is like, "Oh, I'll just be the father figure for the night. He can go do whatever. You don't need him." Kind of pushing the idea that they don't need him. I feel like Agnes kind of being there, all she did was encourage Vision to look further and like try and break out of whatever this is. So I really think that maybe he's served his purpose. He's and needs to leave, or he's getting too close to the truth. And maybe whatever power that be, that's why they brought Pietro into the mix, because Pietro was brought into the mix right as Wanda and Vision were having this very serious emotional conversation where like they were seconds away from having a breakthrough and a nice heart to heart. So maybe this is just this universe's way of being like, "Oh yeah, no, you don't have a dead brother." Just to kind of satiate her while also getting him out of the picture.
Exactly. And he mentions that Pietro says he's here to stir up some tension with the big brother in law.
Also, can we talk about how, so the two times that Vision has broken through with somebody, it was Norm and it was Agnes. With Norm, all he says is her. "You have to stop her, get her out of my head." And Agnes names Wanda specifically. However, if it's not Wanda, she could just be stirring more tension, giving him more of a reason to suspect his wife.
Exactly. And she says Wanda won't let us leave. She won't even let us think about it. That's untrue because in the third episode, the doctor does think about leaving. He has plans to go to Bermuda. He just ultimately cannot. So that I thought was a little tidbit of like Agnes isn't really telling the truth. To add to the sus count, Agnes isn't who she says she is. Obviously, she's dressed up as a witch. The big theory is that it is Agatha Harkness. I think it was just an act that she pulled to freak Vision out more. She's obviously at the edge of the town. She mentions that he's an Avenger, even though he doesn't know what that is. And she also mentions that he's dead, which I think is probably the thing that freaks him out the most, because that's the part he doesn't understand. Even more than what is an Avenger is like, how can I be dead? I'm literally right here.
Yeah, I 100%. All she does is just stir up trouble and stoke the flames a little bit, and just encourage him to leave this bubble. I think I kind of, whatever's going on here, because I was talking about earlier how I didn't know how I think Wanda, I don't think she's fully controlling everybody in this situation, or at least doesn't know that she is. I kind of believe that a little bit more now. I think that maybe all Wanda did was create the sitcom environment, create the hex. I don't think she thinks she has control of the people specifically in it. Or maybe all she did was just create the hex as kind of a protection, and the sitcom and the brainwashing are just someone else who's in there adding to the mix.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we cut back to the lab. Monica gets a text from her engineering friend that they will meet her in an hour. So her and Jimmy go off to do that. Darcy stays behind because she has one more thing in Hayward's computer that she has to bust into that she thinks is going to be helpful. And Monica's like, okay, sure, just I'll text you our location. We'll meet you there. So back to who this engineering friend is. So in our last episode, I theorized maybe it's going to be Reed Richards, but something I think is interesting is so in Spanish, if you watch the episode in Spanish, when referring to her engineering friend, she uses the feminine instead of the masculine. So that's implying that this might be a woman.
But then in this episode, she does say, I need to meet my guy.
But that's also could be a term. Like Olivia Schilling is the drug guy, or our drug guy.
True, but it's like if they still wanted it to be, kind of, who could it be? They could have said something else, like my contact or my source, or like something that is still gender neutral. But she did specifically say guy.
True. I don't know. I don't see. I mean, maybe it was a translating error. But I feel like that's a huge translating error, because I feel like the Spanish are people who speak Spanish are a lot of the audience for these.
I mean, that would be awesome if it was like if.
But I also don't know who that could be.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it could be Riri Williams, but I don't know if they'd bring her in this early, especially since there is nothing else on the Ironheart series other than her casting.
Unless this is their way to kind of introduce that.
A possibility.
Although I feel like Monica would have contacts who aren't teenagers.
Also true.
Although that would be cool if she's like, oh yeah, there's this cool kid. But also, when she would have known Riri, if Riri's a teenager, if she blipped for 5 years, she would have been 11 or 12. So
also true.
All right. So it's around the end of the night in Wandaland. Her and Pietro are at a hay maze, and they have a heart-to-heart / information gathering moment. Throughout the scene, it feels like Pietro is really trying to push her for information. Well, it doesn't feel like he is. He's like, how'd you do it? How did you do all this? Which I think is interesting, because previously we were going off the assumption that the powers that be were manipulating Wanda here, but maybe they were just taking advantage of a situation, or maybe they just got caught up in this and they're trying all of this is to get out. Who knows? I think it was Screen Crush delivered the theory that it was very simple and obvious that might be the direction that they're going. Is what if the powers that be that are controlling this are the Kree, the alien race that we were introduced to in Captain Marvel? No, we weren't introduced to them, but that was prominent in Captain Marvel.
Interesting.
So the main points to this theory were that hexagons are everywhere in Kreeland in Captain Marvel. It's in all their technology, all their architecture. It is just hexagons on hexagons on hexagons, which is just it's such a specific art detail. It'd be kind of awkward, especially for these two things that were made so close to each other, to be like, oh, we're both using a lot of hexagons. Also, the Kree were previously controlling Captain Marvel, who is a superpowered woman who is given powers by an Infinity Stone, and they did this by manipulating what she thought and and just manipulating her and her perception of her reality.
That is a good point.
Also, Monica Rambeau is a very prominent character in this. Monica Rambeau, of course, being Maria Rambeau's daughter, who was introduced in Captain Marvel. And Captain Marvel, of all the previous Avengers, is the hero that they are bringing up the most. Again, the episode before, we saw that Monica had some bad blood with Captain Marvel when Jimmy Woo brought her up. And then once again, Tyler Hayward specifically brought up Captain Marvel here. So it makes sense that we know that this is going to tie into Doctor Strange because they've told us that, but it would make even more sense that on top of that, it ties into Captain Marvel, especially because Captain Marvel was the last Phase 3 super hero that was introduced and is kind of the one leading the charge into Phase 4.
That's good. I could totally see it.
But I saw that video and I was like, what? No way. Let's see this. And then I watched it and I was like, oh God, we're idiot. We're all dumb. We've all been like, oh God, the fabric of the universe and oh the little when it's so yeah, I think that was notable. And again, it's another example of a Captain Marvel detail making its way into the show. We also know that there's going to be a surprise celebrity cameo or a surprise cameo. It could be Captain Marvel. That's someone that we haven't really been talking about who it could be, but
or it could maybe be Doctor Strange. I think we can get back to that when we talk about what happens at the very end of the episode, but they're needing some big guns. They're needing some reinforcements that are up to Wanda's level, essentially. Because that's the only way to defeat an Avenger level threat is with one of the Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
So to add to the sus count, the fact that Pietro asks her how she's doing this, he asks her where she's been hiding all these kids, is very suspicious to me because it kind of reminds me of the previous episode when Agnes asks her, oh, you can really do that? You can really bring people back from the dead, kind of just wanting more information. This kind of reminded me of that. Like he also doesn't have the full picture. Just like Wanda, just like everyone else, they don't know what's going on. And he's wanting to kind of egg her on a little bit. And she admits that while she is doing all of this, she doesn't actually know how. She just remembers being completely alone. Like, again, that commercial on the island, just completely alone and in the void of her own emotions. And then, according to her, suddenly this whole thing happened. So, I mean, it could definitely play into what we've been saying of someone taking advantage of Wanda and her grief, and kind of this whole thing is kind of just spiraling out of anyone's control.
Mm-hmm. And again, kind of going back to, it feels like whatever powers that be are trying to push Vision out of the picture, because Vision being a loved one who is finding out what's happening and disapproving of it, and now you have a loved one who knows what's happening and fully endorses it, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's whatever is keeping her here really doesn't want her to stop what she's doing. So it's gonna be really interesting to see who or what this is. Again, with the sus count, Evan Peters, I think what number are we at right now? 5, 6. His whole character is one big red flag.
Definitely. She turns away and turns back to see him riddled with bullets, much like that Vision scene.
Mm-hmm. And that little jump scare that we had at the beginning of the episode where he just snuck up on her, that was such a good payoff for that.
Mm-hmm. Which I think it's interesting because I don't believe she ever saw Pietro's dead body, because even though we got the glimpse of it in the previously on of how he died, he had more bullets in reality than he does in this little flashback, and he doesn't have the little blood dripping from his mouth.
So that leads us to our tense as heck finale for the episode. Vision tries to break through the barrier. It tries to keep him in, but he tries really, really hard to break this seal. And he gets out sort of, and he starts disintegrating. And he starts pleading with the people outside, Hayward and his goons, for help to help the people inside. Darcy sees this and sees that he's disintegrating and dying, and just yells out to them of like, why aren't you helping him? They handcuffed her to a car, and she continues to scream at them as they just kind of watch Vision die again.
This part was great. Going back to that aspect ratio, I was thinking that when they would cut back to Vision, it would be still in that sitcom full screen, but it's not. When they cut back to Vision, it's still in the 16:9 aspect ratio, kind of hinting that he is now getting closer to what the reality is. It's intense. He literally gets, blown back, and ends up crumpling into the position that we saw him in when he first died in Infinity War.
And then we cut to Billy, who is hearing these screams for helps and is getting just little flashes and glimpses of his father dying. And he runs to his mom to let her know what he's seeing and what's happening. Whew. And it's Wiccan. Wiccan gets his powers. We got Speed, and now we got Wiccan.
Mm-hmm. He's able to stop Speed with his powers that seem to glow blue. I don't know what that could mean. I know that in the comics, he has the same red energy as his mom. It's probably nothing. It's probably just like a little change, but they go. He tells Wanda that Vision is in trouble. As soon as he mentions that he sees soldiers, that's when Wanda immediately knows what's happening, what's going on. He mentions soldiers, but he doesn't mention specifically where, because Wiccan also probably doesn't know that he's in a simulation, he's in a hexagon either. This is just like a completely random event that's happening, but he knows that his father is dying somewhere. And Wanda's reaction is, okay, if I can't specifically find out where he is, I'll just make everything bigger to encompass where he could potentially be.
And then Wanda goes just super Saiyan. Not really. Well, yeah.
Without the screaming.
With less screaming. She stops time and she just increases the boundaries of her hexagon, making it bigger and basically eating the entirety of the sword encampment, including Darcy, by the way.
I think it's also worth noting that before that, when she's trying to get Billy to figure out where Vision is and to focus, Pietro says it's not like your dead husband can die twice, which is not true because he did die twice. And also she blasts him with energy. Kind of, to me, that seemed like Wanda's like, okay, now you are not a part of this family. Like, now I have no idea who you are, because no one who knows me would ever say that to me. But I loved this part. I love seeing how things get changed in this reality. I love that the sword tents became circus tents, and all of the cars became carnival cars, and the helicopters became hot air balloons. It was just all so perfect. And those giant stadium lights became like little carnival flags. I thought it was all just very, very clever.
I do like the fact that she turned all the sword agents into clowns.
Love it. Because that's what she thinks they are. She thinks they're clowns.
So far, the only people we know to have escaped are Monica and Jimmy and Hayward and the two people in his car. Darcy got eaten by this, which also, previously, Darcy did get through that last firewall on Hayward's laptop. The last thing we saw from her is her going, "Oh shit," to Hayward, "you sneaky bastard," and sending whatever she found to Jimmy. So that is information that Jimmy and Monica are going to have going forward. But most importantly, that she can tell Vision and Wanda.
She absolutely, this is very true. I completely missed that. She did send it in an email. Fabulous. Go, Darcy, we stan. I'm excited to see what she becomes in this universe. I'm intrigued to see if her memory gets erased or if Wanda is just losing control over keeping this narrative.
Yeah.
We're gonna be in like the Modern Family episode next, and I know her character in Two Broke Girls is in that area, that time period as well. So I hope that they make a reference to that. I hope we get to see Darcy as a snarky waitress.
Right. I think that'd be a missed opportunity if they didn't do that.
Oh, absolutely. But that's where it ends after Wanda expands the hexagon that Hayward and Monica and Jimmy are escaping. She opens her eyes again, and that's when the episode cuts. I'm excited to see what this means, like what the ramifications of this expanding hex is gonna be now.
Next episode, we're gonna get the aftermath of this. We're gonna see what happened to Darcy, hopefully. We're definitely gonna meet Monica's engineering friend. And I think the first 3 episodes for the sitcom setup. These 3 episodes have kind of been like, here are the powers at play episodes. So I think the next 3 episodes are gonna be epic.
Oh yeah.
I think Vision is going to recognize Darcy when he sees her. I think he might. I think Wanda's going to reveal to him a little bit more what's going on. I think that she stole him from that. Whatever this is, it's to protect him from something, probably sword. And I think Jimmy and Monica might break through, or at least are going to attempt to break through. If not, they might be contacting whatever surprise cameo that we're going to be getting.
I'm excited for these next few episodes. I'm excited to see if Vision remembers dying. I wonder if Wanda is going to, when she finds him, erase his memory and everything is going to be fine, or if he's going to be like, okay, this has gone on too long, and now you need me to let me help you.
Yeah, I think the next 3 episodes we are going to see, because the first 3 episodes, Wanda and Vision, perfect couple. Next 3 episode, starting to fall apart. Last 3 episodes, I think they're going to resolve. I think they're going to resolve and come together as a force, hopefully. Or they won't, and that's what breaks Wanda. We shall see.
That we shall. We'll find out later on. So tune in next week as we continue going through this wonderful, wonderful series.
If you have a theory or want to comment on one of ours, you can tell us what you think in the comments or send us an email at sirensdenpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to Ty, our producer, and to Sean Thomas at fuzzstudio.com for our theme song.
We'll catch you next time.
Bye!
Bye!